Today, I'd like to break down our copyright lesson that was created using the Assure model for instruction. Firstly, let's establish what the Assure model is. The Assure model is a step-by-step guide for effectively teaching and incorporating useful technologies into any given lesson, from inception to implementation and review. Using this model allows educators to check the effectiveness of a lesson and each step in its development and over the course of multiple instruction periods. The Assure model involves 6 simple steps, each corresponding with a letter in the word. The first step, A, involves analyzing your learners. What are the general characteristics of the students? What knowledge are they already coming into the lesson with? And how do their learning styles and individual needs vary? The next step is step S, state the standards and objectives. You have to make sure that the objective of your lesson lines up with the relevant standards and curriculum. Both need to be stated clearly. The next S involves selecting strategies and resources for the lesson. This will involve determining how exactly the lesson will be delivered and what tools or technologies will be used in doing so. Step U involves utilizing resources. Check that your resources are in working order and compatible with the lesson, in addition to preparing the learners and classroom setting for the lesson. Step R, require learner participation. Use activities during the lesson that keeps students engaged so that they can stand to benefit from it. The last step, E, involves evaluating and revising. Evaluate your students' performance and accept feedback from them. Look for potential areas to improve in future implementations of the lesson. Before we go over how the copyright lesson adheres to the Assure model, I'd like to go over the structure of the lesson and its corresponding activity. Firstly, students will be presented the associated lecture on the basics of copyright law and intellectual property. Secondly, the students will then be divided into groups of 4, directed to the U.S. Copyright Office and Creative Commons websites on their personal laptops, and asked to research their assigned item from the list below. The list below involves the roles that each student in groups of 4 will play in creating a poster board that describes A, the concepts of and relationship between copyright and intellectual property, B, at least 3 examples of protections provided to copyright holders, C, the purpose of and an example of fair use, and D, the concept of Creative Commons and at least 3 Creative Commons license types. On to the Assure model, let's establish how our copyright lesson adheres to each step in the creation and implementation of this lesson. Step A, analyze learners. Firstly, this lesson accounts for the students having little to no prior knowledge of copyright law, so it clearly explains the basics for them. The language and complexity of the lesson is also designed for an 8th grade reading class. Audio, visual, and hands-on methods of delivery are used during the lesson to account for variation in learning styles and the unique sensory needs of individual students. This is really just to say that both visual and audio explanations are included in the presentation alongside a hands-on group activity, so that all types of sensory input are there for students to utilize. S. State the standards and objectives. This lesson fulfills the ISTES 1.1d Technology Operations, 1.2c Intellectual Property, and 1.3a Effective Research Strategies standards for students. Given that the objective of the lesson is to only teach the basics of copyright law, the related topic of digital citizenship is excluded from the lesson's presentation. S. Select strategies and resources. The lesson itself will be delivered through a presentation format at 13 minutes in length. The presentation is short enough to hold the attention of students of this age group, but just long enough to fully explain the lesson content. Students are already provided with the personal laptops needed for the research portion of the activity. The poster board supplies and presentation display resources are already in possession of and provided to students by the school library. U. utilize resources. Before the lesson begins, the school library will be double-checked for the needed supplies so students can make their group poster boards and projector functionality for the delivered presentation portion. The projector viewing area will be arranged into tables with 4 seats apiece. This is where students will sit to watch the presentation and later gather for the group work portion of the lesson. R. Require learner participation. While the presentation portion of the lesson requires that students make the effort to pay attention during that time, the activity portion of the lesson involves each student in equal measure. By dividing the students into groups of a set number, and modifications can be made according to the total number of students as necessary. For instance, if you have an odd number of students present that day. Specific roles will be assigned to each group member, and all students are held accountable for and required to participate in the activity so that their group gets full credit for the assignment. E. Evaluate and revise. The poster board of each student group will be evaluated and graded according to the rubric in the attached Word document. In addition to noting the average grade for the lesson activity, students will be asked how they enjoy the lesson format and what, if any, suggestions they have for future implementation. That'll be all for today, and thank you for watching.